we'll get on to the first game of the weekend that we want to talk about this week, which I think we have to cover this first because of the magnitude of the game.
Yeah.
Potentially will be a very telling result in how the season pans out, really.
Yeah, it could go down to the wire, and this result might actually help.
Yeah, for sure. Arsenal versus City at the Emirates. Arsenal 1-0. Would you say a shock result? I mean, me and you had a feeling that if Arsenal were going to go and beat City,
It's got to be now.
it had to be now.
Yeah. You said it. You're going with a shock result with an Arsenal win, and I said, to be fair, I don't see it being a shock because the players that City have got out for it is not.
Yeah, I think we mentioned last week, and I think it is obviously Rodri's a huge miss, and we've now seen that in 3 domestic games in a row that they've had the League Cup game, they had Wolves last week, and they had Arsenal this week. They've lost every single match without Rodri in their team.
Shows how vital Rodri is to the team.
Yeah, and then they obviously had him back available for the Champions League game midweek. They win that. Mm-hmm. So it shows how much of a difference he makes. And I did mention last week as well, I remember in recent times, especially last season as well, when it was going down to the wire with Arsenal and City for the title charge, was De Bruyne dictating that game, having such an impact, scoring in the game. And obviously he's not available.
Yeah.
They still, you mentioned obviously like John Stones came on today, but he's not been fit and available for games previously to today.
I noticed in this week's games, well, today's game, when City were going forward, it just felt like they was a bit clueless, and they was definitely missing De Bruyne.
Definitely.
Whether you can say that like for the rest of the previous games, because he's been out for a while, hasn't he?
Yeah.
But in the other games, they didn't really, because they can dominate other teams, but when it comes to a team like Arsenal, you need that person to put the balls in. And
yeah, he's a match winner, isn't he? Those players that are the best of the best, they really come alive, I think, in these big games and thrive.
Yeah.
And I think he was a big miss. Obviously, Rodri's a huge miss. A few key talking points of the game, really, and I think one that Liverpool fans, if they were watching the game, would probably be livid with based on last week's result that they had with Spurs and all the VAR controversy that we covered.
Yeah.
The Kovacic potential red card, and if not red card, 2 yellows that probably should have led to a red card.
It was unbelievable how he stayed on the pitch. And I don't like seeing it, because I said it for the Liverpool game last week. If you're sending a player off like 30 minutes into a game, you're ruining the game.
Yeah.
And I said that for the Liverpool game, right? But how can you not send him off?
Do you think, like how you've just said there's been a lot of people talking about that Liverpool result and saying it's ruined a big game, it's ruined the game. Do you think that plays a part in whether the referee and additionally the VAR, based on what happened last week, they're thinking, let's not send him off. We've had all this backlash midweek.
Oh, it definitely does.
I think that plays a part.
Yeah, definitely. You can just tell, like, obviously refs would come out and say it doesn't play a part. This is how we work, all that. But you can just tell, like, with the results and the VAR decisions. So, like, one thing happens one week, like you say, the Liverpool game. The same thing happens the next, and like, they're a bit like 50-50 on it.
It's like influenced how they're making the next decision based on like the feedback that they've had.
It goes back to what I said last week. I actually think the referees have gone worse because they're getting second guessed by VAR all the time.
Yeah. I think I've seen some City fans, and I'm not stereotyping all of them by any means, but I've seen some people on Twitter today saying, it's never a red, what are the people complaining for? And I think, so take that out of it.
The Kovacic one?
Yeah.
Really?
I've seen people saying that it's not a straight red. But then even if you don't think that's a straight red, it's a yellow, and the follow-up is a yellow.
He goes in with his studs up twice.
What's he doing going into that second one?
I don't know.
When he's been
like
booked,
a nothing ball.
When he's been booked, and he's probably, you would say, in my opinion, I think it probably is a red card. And I don't think that's me being hypocritical. When we spoke about this in the past, I said I think you should be able to go into challenges and stuff like that. But when I've made those comments, that's with regards to if you make contact on the ball.
Yeah.
And this was not an instance where that was on display. You know,
I actually thought the first one was a straight red.
I think it could be because he doesn't touch the ball.
It could easily
straight
be a straight
through the
red.
back of the player. The foot's high, studs showing. And then the second one, it's almost like similar. This is where I think Liverpool fans would be aggrieved if they were watching the game. where you know how Jota's thrown himself in. It's a bit of a stupid challenge for him to make.
Yeah.
This one you'd say is the same with Kovacic. He's very lucky to be on the pitch anyway. What are you doing?
It was in Arsenal's half, you know.
Yeah, it's not like it was a pressured situation.
No.
So I think when you look at the balance of it, I think a lot of people would agree that it wasn't a very thrilling game.
Oh, no.
The quality wasn't particularly high,
Honestly,
considering the teams that were playing.
Yeah, I nearly fell asleep watching that. It was so bad. Like I actually put a story up saying I'd rather watch Man United, and that is saying something.
At least they keep you entertained.
Yeah.
Or the other team playing us do.
Yeah.
But I think to look at it from that point of view, that obviously Arsenal went on to manage to nick the game. It was actually the first time in the Premier League since 2015 that Arsenal have beat City. And I believe it's the first time Arteta, based on that, has beat Pep Guardiola, because the last time that Arsenal won, it was when Pellegrini was in charge at City.
Yeah.
So I think it's a great result from an Arsenal perspective, because it's finally like, obviously City pipped them to the title last year. That's probably still hurting for them this season. To be able to finally get one off on them and go ahead of them in the table, it puts City into third now, and I don't think that's panic stations by any means, but it's been coming, that result. I think
the way that goal went in, it was a very scruffy goal. I mean, if that happened for United, we would be like, "Oh, we don't care. This could be a massive result for us." And it's the same with Arsenal. You
don't care how it goes in.
You don't care how it goes in. I mean, the game was that dead. Arsenal didn't deserve a 1-0. Like, it just deserved a 0-0. It was that dead.
Yeah.
And City was very unfortunate. But if you play average like that, something like this is going to happen.
Would you argue as well on the basis, this is where I'm sitting on it, is I think you're right. I think a draw based on how poor the performance levels were from the teams that we know can do so much better, but based on the fact that they probably should have been down to 10, and then you'd fancy Arsenal's chances probably more against 10 men, that a result was maybe justified for Arsenal today.
Yeah, that I did notice the... I don't know if it was Gary Neville that said it, but on the commentary, they actually said, like, it was very scruffy, very lucky for Arsenal, but in the end it was probably deserved because they should have had a player sent off City. So
yeah, they'd have felt very hard done by Arsenal today if they'd gone in at 0-0. It'd have been a chance missed for them.
Yeah,
they would have felt that they should have been playing with a man advantage for the majority of the match as well. Those tackles, whether you look at it as it should have been 2 yellows or a straight red, both of those tackles were early in the first half, weren't they? So
I haven't seen much from Rice to give a proper opinion on him yet in an Arsenal shirt, but I think they've been missing that sort of player. Do you know, positioning? Positioning kind of goes under the radar a lot with like football fans. We don't really care much about positioning, but Declan Rice cleared it off the line. Gvardiol could have had a goal early on, and Declan Rice got himself to the back post. He didn't have to. He wasn't there for the corner. He literally got himself back there. Yeah. And I think that goes a long way, but it goes unnoticed.
I think a lot of those things do. Like sometimes you're off the ball movement. Obviously, then he ends up being in a position where he's near the ball. But I always looked at somebody at the different end of the pitch. But when I realised how good he was when he came to the Premier League was Edison Cavani for United.
Yeah.
His positional awareness and his off the ball movement.
He's not the fastest player, but that positioning gets him in them places.
And there is a lot of players like that, and I think because you're not necessarily always seeing it in highlight reels and stuff. Obviously, with someone like Cavani, it's a bit different because you'll see potentially how he moves that could lead to a goal.
Yeah.
When you're a midfielder, and that's a big part of your game, sometimes it goes unnoticed. I think the off-the-ball movement and putting yourself in dangerous positions, whether that's defensively or in an attacking sense.
Yeah.
But absolutely brilliant result for Arsenal, and obviously now them and Tottenham joint top of the league. I think one of them's probably ahead in some respect. I don't know how they work that out.
They're both on 20 points with 10 goal difference.
Yeah.
So yeah, all it's calling for now is an Arsenal Spurs game. We should have had that now, shouldn't we?
North London derby.
Yeah.
I think it sets it up. It feels like, I think with the international break, obviously I'm not thrilled about that, and I think a lot of Premier League fans would be agreeable in that sense, but it's almost a nice point to have a pause in the season, and especially for us looking at this in a podcasting sense where we can sort of analyse everything so far now. You know, we're at a point where there's a natural break now.
Yeah.
I think City need the break, honestly.
Yeah.
I don't think they've been particularly impressive by their own standards so far this season. And I think that loss has been coming based on the Wolves result, based on they got knocked out by Newcastle in the Cup. And I think since they've been missing Rodri, they've just not looked the same at all. And obviously now his ban's served, the players will go away. Maybe when they can come back, they can really kickstart their season. Because I can't see this being like City just having a poor season. I'll be really shocked if they don't find their normal form.
I just want someone to annoy Rodri again, just so we can get a ban for the derby, because we've seen how City struggle with him being out.
Yeah, it's a huge shame for us, I think, as United fans, that seeing how they've performed in those. Well, to be honest, that we've been that poor that we probably won't capitalise on it.
Thrashers,
yeah, they could have half that first team missing, and
yeah.
But yeah, great result for Arsenal. I think. Is it a worry for City? I think it's a slight worry, but the standards for them are so high, it's not something that I think we should be getting carried away with and saying like, oh, it's really, really bad at Manchester City right now.
I remember at the start of the season, well, obviously we're only 8 games in, but at the very start, everyone was like, City aren't even getting out of second gear and all that stuff. But they weren't even at second gear today. It was terrible.
Well, I thought when I saw bits of the game today, I was doing some errands and stuff, so I've watched the majority of it and seen the highlights and things like that. But what I noticed with City is, I think it did look like they were missing some of the more senior players. I know they had some senior players available, but it didn't feel like it by the way they played. You know, I think Stones is a big person in that team when he's in the 11. I think obviously Kevin De Bruyne is, and he's the captain.
Yeah.
I think Rodri, obviously, just based on like the work that he does within the team, makes a big difference. And I think the players that were out, it was very telling that they were missing those players in the game. Yeah. But the fact that Arsenal only just went and nicked it, with all those things considered, I think Arsenal fans would just be absolutely buzzing with the result and won't be really worrying about that. But
no, but yeah.
It wasn't like they were heads and shoulders above City today, and City weren't at the best, were they? So how you look at that in the grand scheme of things is maybe different.
It might be Arteta and Pep just literally cancelling each other out.
Yeah, it could be.
But you want them sort of games to be end-to-end, don't you?